As young girls, we often grow up playing with baby dolls, knowing that one day that fantasy will become a reality when we become mothers ourselves. But what happens if, when you are very young, you're diagnosed with something that will make that dream become an impossibility? This is Tasha. Tasha was diagnosed with Turner syndrome. It is incurable, and it has made her dream of becoming a mother an impossibility. This is Tasha's story in her own words, where she will tell you how her journey has been filled with heartache, pain, but more importantly, how it's filled with hope.
When I was about 14, 15, I was a late bloomer, but I never really put two and two together. I didn't know. My mom didn't know. Nobody knew. When you're a teenager, you don't say these types of things. You just don't talk about it because it's embarrassing. And eventually hit puberty, all that, which I don't want to say most, but a lot of girls with Turner syndrome don't enter puberty. They call it, when you do, they call it spontaneous, because it's not everybody does naturally. And I was about 15, so I was a late bloomer, which, that's not out of the norm. My doctor that diagnosed me, pretty much from when she did my karyotyping, she said you probably entered what they call early menopause, or ovarian failure, when you were about 18 or 19 years old. About a few years later, when I was 20, ended up moving down here with my mom and dad, and had never been to an OBGYN, no nothing. And I finally, about a year or so after we moved here, I finally thought, well, I'm gonna go to OBGYN, see what they have to say. And I just went to the one in Madisonville. They don't have any they're mainly a maternity center. And they're like, well, they did their thing with birth control pills and this and that, because that's what they throw at everything. And of course, had a couple cycles, whatever. And they asked me, are you still without birth control pills? I said, no. They're like, well, I think we need to send you to another doctor that is more equipped to deal. There's something else going on. And and I was like, okay, let's, figure this out. They told me to go. I never went. I just kind of waited about another year or so, year and a half. In the meantime, met my husband, and we met in 2003. Started dating that fall, and dated on and off for a little bit. I ended up moving back home the next May, and I was back up home for about 2 months. Ended up coming back down here, and we got engaged the following April. We got married in the October of 2005, and it was, 2005. It was a year and a half. So it was January of 2007. I finally decided, all right, let's go to this doctor that they wanted me to go to. She met with me, talked to me, whatever, and she got all my medical history, and she said, well, with your past history and your symptoms and this and that and the other, I think she kind of suspected what was going on. And she goes, I'd like to do karyotyping. Well, I was 25 years old. I didn't know what a karyotyping was. I never heard of that day in my life. Most people don't unless you get that done. And what it is this: they just draw blood and they spin it, and they look at your chromosomes in your blood is what they do. Back about a week or so later, because of course I had to be sent off. Had to go to Mayo Clinic, I think. And met again, and she told me what was going on, and she said, your karyotyping came back positive for Turner syndrome. And I said, what is that? And she said, well, there's two different variations of it. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people have never heard of it, but it's really not super uncommon. she said what you have is mosaic Turner syndrome, which it doesn't affect all of your chromosomes. It only affects some. There's different variations. You can have a complete deletion of your chromosome. You can have the deletion of one arm of your chromosome. You can have it could just be all jumbled up. There's just different aspects to it, and everybody who's diagnosed with it has completely different characteristics. Nobody looks the same. Nobody, I mean, there are some people that you wouldn't even know have it. When I found that out, it really tailspin me into a depression, and I had never been depressed a day in my life. I had no clue. I didn't even know I was depressed. I was depressed for a few years, and it changed me. I'm not the same person I used to be. And I mean, just like anything changes people. You have something major that happens in your life, it changes you. During those couple of years, I almost lost my job. I just had this I don't give a crap attitude. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't care about anybody. I didn't realize until a few years later, after I just kind of, I want to say snapped out of it, but I don't, that to me that's what it felt like, but I don't think I just snapped out of it. And I think I had a really hard time wrapping my mind around why, how did this happen? Why is this happening to me? I don't, and then, you know, family, if they didn't know how to approach it, they didn't know, because nobody knew anything about it. And so it was really, really isolating. Kenny still laughs about it to this day. I told him, I said, I'm giving you an out. We'd only been married a year and a half. I said, you don't deserve this. Like, if you deserve to have a family, if that's what you want, everybody does. And I gave him an out. I said, I'm not going to keep you in a marriage if you don't want to be in it. And, oh, God, it's going to make me cry. And he just laughs about it. Now he does. And he's just like, I would never do that. He goes, I didn't marry you for your ability or inability to have children. That's not why I'm with you. And I told him multiple times, I'm just like, go. You don't deserve this. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. And it was one of those moments in a marriage where it can either just completely tear you apart or bring you closer together. Fast forward a few years later, and we live our happy married life and whatever, and moved a few times in the process. And in 2011, that's when we both decided to go back to school. And that was honestly probably the best thing for me, because at that time I still had baby on the brain. I wanted a family. I wanted this and I wanted that. And it was good for me to do that at the time, because it took my mind off of it. It took my mind off it for about 5 years. And it did. And now we're almost 3 years past that, and it led us to where we are now. I had a friend I went to high school with, and she on Facebook, she had tagged me in something, and it was about the NEDC, which is in Knoxville, and it's the National Embryo Donation Center. I mean, it's known worldwide, nationwide, whatever. And she goes, have you ever thought about anything like this? I had never thought about it. I mean, but we kind of put it on, and I never really looked into it at that time. And because I thought, my God, if we can't afford adoption, how could we afford something like that? Because I didn't look into it, so I never thought that it was literally like a quarter of the price of less than a quarter of a price of what an adoption costs. And so I just kind of, okay, whatever, and just kind of put it on the back burner. We had a friend of mine who contacted me about a woman who was 7 months pregnant, and she wanted to adopt her child out, and this and that and the other, and that turned into something that we went through. I'm glad we went through, but we found out that that's not for us. And then I had a friend of mine who offered to be a surrogate. This all happened within the span of from middle of June to like September. I had a friend who offered to be a surrogate for us, and we were actually almost going to do it. Then she ended up having to move away, and I had a another friend of mine who we spoke. She found out she was pregnant, and that ended up she thought that she wanted to do adoption, and it just never happened either. And I still, to this day, I don't know why all that happened. It was just like bang, bang, boom. And it all like came to us. We didn't go looking. We didn't go talking to anybody. We didn't anything. It's just like this all came to us at one time. And then I had one of my best friends. She offered to be a surrogate too. And that ended up not being able to happen because of insurance reasons. After all of that, we finally decided, okay, let's actually talk to somebody. Let's talk to an adoption agency. And it was, we actually spoke with an agency, and I think it was Illinois. And they specialize in adopting newborns. And we probably would have been spending upwards of probably close to about $50,000 by the time all was said and done. And we got off the phone call, and we were just kind of looked at each other, and we were just like, we can't do that. And then we were going to move forward with my friend who offered to be a surrogate, and due to the insurance, we ended up not being able to do that. And I was sitting in the same place again, and sitting in my bedroom alone, crying, and I'm just like, why does, after that summer and all of this stuff happening, why does everything keep coming and then just falling apart? Literally, everything would come to us and just fall apart. By nobody's fault. I mean, it wasn't nobody's fault. It was just, the situations just fell apart. I remembered that my friend from high school had tagged me on that thing on Facebook, and here I go looking, and I saved it. I go looking on Facebook, and I'm like, where is that post? And I go back in the spring, and I found it where she had tagged me in it, and I was looking at it, and I went to their website because I couldn't remember the name of it. And I started looking it up, and I was looking at the pricing, and I told Kenny, I was like, oh my God. I said, this is something we could like literally do. And so I contacted them, and he was all on board. He's like, okay. Required a home study, and that you have to pay for, which is over $1,000. And I was like, okay, so they require a home study and all this other stuff. And then I don't know what made me, but I just went on and I Googled fertility clinics near me, and the one we went to in Nashville popped up. And I was like, okay, so I called them, got some information from them, asked them questions. Do you require a home study? Do you require this? Do you require that? No, they didn't require any of it. They didn't require a psychological evaluation. They didn't require a home study because it's not an adoption. So it's governed under property law because it's property. It's your bodily tissue. It's property. And so really the places that do home studies, it's their own personal thing that they want to do. It's not that you have to legally have a home study. Met with them, and everything went great. Our funding came through to be able to afford it, no problem. And we thought long and hard about doing it because, we said, well, if this doesn't work, we're going to be paying for this for the next 4 to 5 years, just depending. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it. He said, let's do it. All right, so we go and do it. And everything went great. All of my checkups, everything was wonderful. There was no reason. My hormone levels went fine. I was responding to the meds perfect. Like, everything was on target, had no issues. We go in for the transfer, and transfer went fine, had no issues. I felt fine. I was off work for a couple days after, and of course then you got to wait for 2 weeks, and 9 days actually, I think it was, and then I had to go all the way back to Nashville. I think we probably made about 15 trips to Nashville back and forth or so. Maybe not quite that many, but close. And went back, had my blood test done, wasn't pregnant. Actually, during the process before our transfer, I found 2 other women who actually I knew from a couple groups on Facebook. And it was just the weirdest thing. All 3 of us picked embryos out of the exact same embryo group, which was just weird to me. And so, like, when all this happened, like, I had no reason. The doctors didn't give me a reason why. I mean, everything was fine. Like, I had no reason why this won't work. And to this day, I don't know why it didn't work. But those 2 women, they didn't have successful pregnancies either. One wasn't pregnant at all. I wasn't pregnant at all. And the one woman I think she had a chemical pregnancy, and she ended up losing it. So, and I just found it interesting that all 3 of us had failed cycles. But, I mean, it's just one of those things that you don't know. And we really would love to be able to try at least one more time. We have found, and I wish I would have thought about doing this before I ever went to the place in Nashville. I actually found through one of my groups on Facebook that I'm in, there is a doctor in, where is it, Delaware or Vermont? Delaware. It's like 9 hours away. And they literally, we could have 2 different transfers for the price, less than the price we paid to go to Nashville for one, and 2 embryos. And so Kenny is just like, God, I wish he never would have went to Nashville. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. You know, it's done. You can't do anything about it. It's in the past. First off, give a big hug. Give a big, big hug, and just to give somebody support who is going through infertility is so important. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to struggle to find the right words to say, and I think that's why a lot of people don't know what to say, because they don't. You can't know what to say if you've never been through something. If you've never experienced it, you don't know. Just like I don't know what to say to somebody who's experienced miscarriage or child loss. Like I haven't been there. All I can say is I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. And most of the time, that is the most important thing in the world. And that's exactly what I would say. If you ever need to talk, you are not alone. Because it's a roller coaster, and it's something that doesn't have a owner's manual with it. You don't know how to respond every time you hear, somebody's pregnant, or it's not that you're not happy, especially if it's family or a close friend or whatever. Of course you're happy for them. Of course. What? Just because you can't, that doesn't mean that they don't deserve it. But it's at the same time, it's like a knife in your gut, and it's just, it's really hard, and it's really hard to know how to navigate feelings like that, because it's like you're happy, but yet you are so incredibly sad because you want that so bad, and you don't know why you don't get to have it. I don't know. It's really, really, it's a tough spot to be in, and my heart goes out to anybody who even suffers secondary infertility. I mean, I think it's just as heart-wrenching. I mean, I know of people who have 2-3 kids and have multiple miscarriages after they try to have another one. And I think, I don't want to say it's the same thing, because it's not, but that doesn't make it any less life-altering or heartbreaking. I mean, I don't think it does. A loss is a loss. And that's what infertility is. Infertility is a loss. It's a loss of who you are. It's a piece of me died, and it's never coming back. It just won't. It changed my personality. It changed who I am. I mean, and I don't think it changed me for the worse. For a while, it did. But it did change you. Just like I said, any serious situation would change somebody. And a lot of people don't think it's a serious situation, but it is. There are so many people out there that just take it for granted, and maybe not even take it for granted, just don't think about it because they've never been presented with, hey, this person can't have children. Like, it's one of those things that if it doesn't affect you personally, you won't get it. You won't. This summer was the closest I have ever felt to being pregnant, and I knew I was never pregnant. I was never pregnant, but all those meds made me feel like I was. And for 10 days, I got to feel, even though I felt like crap, and I did, I got to feel what it would be like. And I think that's why it was 10 times harder I was sad, I was mad, I was everything. I cried for probably 2 weeks straight, on and off. It would just, grief, it hits you in waves and goes away. It hits you again and it goes away. And even now, 4 months later, I still don't cry again. It hits me and I'm just like, if only it would have worked, but it didn't. And it is really hard when you see other people on Facebook, on whatever, who are pregnant around the same time, as far along as you would have been. And I know a few people I've seen on Facebook, and I'm happy for them, absolutely. Everybody deserves it. But it's just like, that's supposed to be me, and when is it going to be my turn? It's just really hard. I don't know. It's hard. My husband asked me, how do you live your life constantly feeling sad again? And I said, you do. It's grief. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we have a child in one way or the other. I don't know that that's gonna like fill the hole that's there. Would I be happy? Yeah, absolutely. But a piece of me, a little tiny piece of me, will always be gone. And that little tiny piece is the fact that I will never have a little mini me running around. I'll never have a little girl with my eyes, or a little boy with my freckles, or whatever have you. And I think that's a loss too. A loss, that knowing that you'll never have a little piece of you running around. You won't. Neither will my husband. Like, you'll never have. And just because a child's biologically yours doesn't mean anything. Like, it doesn't. It's, God. Me, that is the part that I struggle with really hard, because it doesn't mean that I'm not going to treat any child that we do get, oh my God, that child's going to be spoiled beyond belief. But it's a loss of you. It's a loss of you passing on anything of yourself. And what I will get to pass on is my upbringing and what my parents taught me. So I guess that's something, but I don't know. It's sad to think that I'll never have somebody look at me and be like, oh, your daughter looks just like you, like my mom gets all the time. You guys could be twins. Like, I won't ever get that. And I just don't think people get it. They just don't understand, and they can't. We're hoping to be able to try again, and we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, we're gonna take our foot into foster care and see how that works. So